Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki. Here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. US President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs on nearly 100 countries, including a 26% levy on India, kicks in. China hit with a total levy of 104%. Beijing vows resolute and forceful measures to protect its interests. Trump says countries are calling him dying to make a deal, also threatens Pharma tariffs very shortly. The Trump tariff sell-off resumes across the world. Stocks tumble across Asia and Europe, but China bucks the trend thanks to strong domestic buying.
I'm Sanjay, but I'm not Sanjay of Mahabharat to be able to, foresee that far.
Reserve Bank cuts repo rate by 25 basis points as expected, changes policy stance from neutral to accommodative. Governor raises the red flag on tariff, says he worries more about the impact on growth rather than inflation, refuses to predict where rates are headed amidst the tariff wars. RBI cuts GDP forecast for this fiscal by 20 basis points to 6.5%, highlighting global risks and the tariff tensions. Also cuts inflation forecast, citing greater confidence in aligning with a 4% target over a 12-month horizon. RBI announces a comprehensive review of gold loan rules, sparking a sell-off among top lenders. Central Bank also promises to expand the scope of co-lending arrangements to all regulated entities. Weak global cues dent Dalal-Street. Sensex loses over 380 points. Nifty drops below 22,400. Rupee weakens for the fourth straight session against the dollar. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar says it's impossible to quantify the impact of US tariffs, remains hopeful of a bilateral trade deal, saying India is the only nation which has reached an understanding in principle with the Trump administration.
Don't be played by the U.S. Don't be anti-China because that makes the U.S. feel so good and speeds your agreement.
Noted American economist Jeffery Sachs warns about getting closer with the United States at the expense of its ties with China, says India should not be anti-China to please the United States. That's an exclusive. Indian government approves a 63,000 crore rupee deal to buy 26 Rafale marine jets from France. The government-to-government deal is expected to be signed shortly. All right, the big story this evening, US President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs on about 90 countries took effect today. The sweeping tariffs, which hit US allies and adversaries alike, are in addition to a 10% baseline levy, which came into effect last Saturday. The tariffs include a 26% duty on all Indian goods exported to the US. China has been hit the hardest by the tariffs with a 104% levy. The hike consists of a 20% tariff levied in March, followed by another 34% announced on 2nd of April and an additional 50% confirmed this week. The White House said that the new tariff structure follows through on Trump's ultimatum to Beijing to roll back its retaliatory duties. China has promised to take resolute and effective measures to safeguard its interests. The country's foreign ministry maintained that they're ready to fight till the end if the US insists on waging a tariff war. The ministry also expressed China's willingness to negotiate, but insisted that it will not follow the USA's current approach. No country has successfully secured a formal exemption from the newly imposed US tariff so far. However, Trump said that his government was working on tailored deals with trading partners. The White House has said that it will prioritize allies like Japan and South Korea. Speaking at a dinner with Republican lawmakers, Trump insisted that countries were quote-unquote dying to make a deal.
This is the largest transaction in the history of our country. And don't let some of these politicians go around saying, because I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. And then I'll see some rebel Republican, some guy that wants to grandstand, say, I think that Congress should take over negotiations. Let me tell you, you don't negotiate like I negotiate.
Well, the ratcheting up of US-China trade tensions, followed by Trump holding his ground on the historic tariff levies, weighed on global equities, from Wall Street to Europe to Asia. Stock markets remain tariff'ied. The sell-off on Wall Street continued after a short-lived relief rally. The US equity market lost 11% of their value in the last 4 trading sessions. The stocks of top 7 tech companies, colloquially known as the Magnificent Seven, collectively lost over $2 trillion in market cap during this period. Apple and Nvidia alone accounted for over 50% of this erosion. This sell-off resumed across the Atlantic after a one-day break. The frontline indices all trading with losses in the range of 3%. China bucked the sell-off trend in Asia thanks to strong buying from domestic buyers. In fact, mainland Chinese investors bought Hong Kong stocks worth a record $4.6 billion as well. The Japanese Nikkei, the South Korean Kospi ended in the red back home. A volatile day on Dalal-Street saw the benchmark indices ending with cuts of 0.5%. However, the Nifty and Sensex ended off the day's lows. The IT sector was the biggest laggard. The RBI Monetary Policy Committee has taken a dovish stance to counter the uncertainties linked to US President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. As expected, the MPC decided to cut the key repo rate by 25 basis points to 6% for the second time in a row. The MPC also made a unanimous decision to change the stance from neutral to accommodative, signaling room for either a pause or more rate cuts in the coming days. The MPC revised the growth forecast for FY26 to 6.5% from 6.7% earlier. The forecast for the first quarter has also been trimmed by 20 basis points. RBI Governor Sanjay Malhotra highlighted that the trade tariffs measures have clouded the global economic outlook, posing new headwinds for growth and inflation. However, he expressed more concerns about the impact on growth than inflation. The MPC expects inflation to moderate to 4% in FY26 as against 4.2% earlier. Now, inflation during the first 3 quarters is expected to be within 4%. Governor Malhotra said global uncertainties could lead to pressure on the Indian currency and imported inflation.
The dent on global growth due to trade frictions will also impede domestic growth. Higher tariffs shall have a negative impact on net exports. You are all aware that India is very vigorously and proactively engaging with the US administration on the foreign trade agreement. The risks to inflation, on the other hand, are two-sided. On the upside, uncertainties may lead to a possible currency pressure and therefore imported inflation. On the downside, slowdown in global growth could entail further softening in commodity and crude oil prices, putting downward pressure on inflation. Overall, while global trade and policy uncertainties shall impede growth, its impact on domestic inflation, while requiring us to be vigilant, is not expected to be of high concern.
Well, Lata Venkatesh joins us now with the editor's take on the RBI MPC's dovish cut. Lata.
My take would be it was more dovish than expected, and it has promises for more dovishness to come. So that's why I think it was an elated market, an elated ecosystem. Why do I say more dovish than expected? 25 basis was always expected, but we didn't get a majority vote when we polled people for the change in stance. So that's clearly more than what the market expected. Again, the growth cut was not quite the unanimous view in the market. The fact that it is cut is an indication that they're seeing challenges to growth. That's always a sign that, you may have to help growth with few more cuts. The CPI cut was clearly a surprise. Most people thought that they would, hold on to their horses. It's also the statement that accompanied. The governor's or the MPC statement is, as per projections, there is now a greater confidence of a durable alignment of headline inflation with the target. Up until December, a dozen policies the MPC has told us that our goal is to use policy to align inflation durably to the target of 4. This durable alignment was a goal. And lo and behold, now the governor is saying it is durably aligned to 4%. So that, again, was something the market was very elated about. It confirms the dovishness. And finally, in answer to a CNBC TV18 question on the neutral rate, let me tell you that everybody was working towards 5.5 as the terminal repo rate in this cycle. We started at 6.5. We are now at 6, and it is expected it will go up to 5.5. How do you arrive at that figure? You achieve 4% inflation. 1.5% is seen as the real rate, which the economy needs. So 4 plus 1.5, 5.5 was what everyone was working with. The governor gave two signs. One, that when he is giving the forecast of inflation for all the months of 2025, inflation is going to be below 4%, between 3.6 and 3.8. And secondly, when we asked him about the real rate, he said RBI studies show it is between 1.1 and 1.9. There was something about his answer which made people feel that it would be okay if the real rate were even towards that 1.1% mark. Put the two together, the market is now almost a majority expecting that the risk is of the repo rate going below 5.5, probably to 5.25. There are many reports that you will hear from brokerages on that score. So that, again, for me, is a sign of more than expected dovishness to come.
Right, thank you, Lata, for that. On to the currency markets. The rupee extended its losing streak for the fourth straight session, falling against the US dollar. A weaker Chinese yuan and sustained foreign investor outflows dragged the currency down. The fall comes despite a dip in crude oil prices and a softer dollar. On to all the action from the commodity space. Crude oil prices fell to its lowest level in over 4 years after USA's 104% tariffs on China kicked in today. The escalating trade war between the two largest economies sparked demand concerns and a rising supply outlook. Gold prices gained as Trump tariffs boosted safe haven buying. The yellow metal, which is above the $3,000 per ounce mark, was further supported by the weakening dollar. Meanwhile, the crypto market, which came under pressure after Trump's tariff measures, is recovering. Bitcoin, which briefly slipped below $75,000 yesterday, is now trading above the $77,000 mark. Shares of Pharma stocks fell in early trade. This after US President Donald Trump signaled at a major tariff on pharma imports. Speaking at an event, Trump added that this move is aimed at encouraging drug companies to shift their operations to the United States. Remember, the Trump administration had exempted pharma and semiconductors from the scope of tariffs, only to reverse his decision soon after.
The same package in our country compared to like London and other places is sometimes 10 times more. 10 times more. But we're going to do something that we have to do. We're going to tariff our pharmaceuticals, and once we do that, they're going to come rushing back into our country because we're the big market. The advantage we have over everybody is that we're the big market. So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals, and when they hear that, they will leave China, they will leave other places because they have to sell. Most of their product is sold here. And they're going to be opening up their plants all over the place in our country.
And staying with tariffs, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that India is trying to negotiate a bilateral trade agreement with the United States by the fall of this year. Speaking at the Rising Bharat Summit, the minister said that the Indian government is the only nation that has reached an understanding with the US to have an agreement on tariffs. He said that it's not possible to speak about the impact of tariffs as yet.
I don't think it's possible to speak about what would be the impact because we don't know. What is our strategy? I think that's pretty clear. We decided that we will engage the Trump administration early on this set of issues. We were very open with them, very constructive with them. As they were with us. What we agreed to do was to try to negotiate a bilateral trade agreement by fall of this year. To the best of my knowledge, and I could be corrected here. I think we are the only country after President Trump has assumed presidency the second time, which has actually reached such an understanding in principle. In our case, our strategy has a goal, and the goal is to see whether it's possible to actually deal with this situation by concluding a bilateral trade agreement. And I should add that in an interesting way, this has long been our objective. I've always wondered why it takes such a long time. Frankly, I've never figured it out. You tell us. No, I've never figured it out because, I see, we have trade negotiations which have been going on for decades. And the negotiators meet, I think, every 6 months or 3 months or 4 months. And I wonder why. I mean, if I were doing a negotiation, I'd be at it till I got the job done. And I think today, when I look back at the last, since the Prime Minister's visit, I'd say mid-Feb, so we're about 6 weeks since then, we've actually had multiple rounds in this period. I think we've had more periods, discussions with the Americans in the last 6 weeks than I suspect we've had with the Europeans in the last 2 years.
Noted American economist Jeffery Sachs has warned India about getting closer with the United States at the expense of its ties with China. Speaking with Shireen Bhan, he said that India should not be anti-China to please the United States. He also added that the US President Donald Trump is wrecking the global economy.
Market capitalization in 2 days, you're probably on the wrong track. The United States is on the path of wrecking the world economy once again. This is not U.S. policy. This is not congressional policy. This is not U.S. public policy. This is Donald Trump's policy. He is single-handedly wrecking the world economy. And I think the damage is going to be done before it gets undone. India really needs normal relations with China. And India should appreciate this is a great civilization, and this is a country that's going to play a huge role in the world in the 21st century. I mean, a huge role in the world on all sorts of things, on culture, on economy, on technology, on global peace. Yes, have good relations with the U.S., but don't be played by the U.S. Don't be anti-China because that makes the U.S. feel so good and speeds your agreement. It's the end of American leadership, I would say. It's the end of other countries looking to the United States as a stabilizer, as a rule-based order, although that was quite frayed already, but now no one could utter those words with regard to the United States. Similarly, China was not in any way isolationist. It was the major trade partner of probably 150 countries in the world. But China has aimed for the last decades to be a responsible participant in the international system. China now has to take a more leadership role. I think China will have to enable the renminbi to play a more international currency role. It's been very gradual, step by step, but I think it's going to have to accelerate.
All right, it's time for a short break, but coming up next, Ather Energy has revised its IPO expectations again. That and much more when we return. Welcome back. The government will acquire 26 Rafale marine fighter aircraft from France. Reports have suggested that the deal will be valued at over 63,000 crore rupees and is expected to be signed in the coming weeks. The deal will include 22 single-seater aircraft and 4 twin-seater variants. The jets have been specifically designed for the Indian Navy's operational requirements. Russian President Vladimir Putin has invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi to attend Russia's Victory Day celebrations on the 9th of May. Reports have said that the visit is currently under discussion between the two nations. Moscow has expressed hope that Prime Minister Modi will attend the event. Russia is celebrating 80 years since the Soviet Union's victory over Germany in the Second World War. More international news. Israeli forces continue to bomb Gaza, killing at least 26 Palestinians yesterday. Doctors Without Borders has said that Israeli attack hit close to its clinic in a so-called safe zone in Gaza. Reports say Israeli forces also bombed a charity kitchen in Khan Yunis on Monday. Peter Elbers has said that airport charges cannot be as high as half the price of a flight ticket. Speaking with CNBC TV18's Mangala Malu, Elbers said that the airlines are in constant discussions with the airports to strike a fine balance.
Airports increasing their prices, it's a matter of a discussion taking place in India and outside India. I think where I would like to sort of engage in a discussion with the airports, if the average prices in India are 6,000 rupees for a ticket, you don't want to have airport charges of 3,000 rupees, right? And that's exactly where I think we need to find a good balance between what is the price point for customers and what is the airport charges.
The Indigo CEO was speaking at the sidelines of an event where the airline announced a partnership with global hospitality company Accor. Interglobe's managing director Rahul Bhatia also spoke with CNBC TV18 on the sidelines of the event about the partnership. He said that the two entities will develop a strategic collaboration through their loyalty programs.
In many ways, I think Interglobe demonstrates that it's long on India, and we are certainly very long on Accor. And to your earlier point, this arrangement has got nothing to do with what may happen in the short term. In the long term, the growth in India is only going to go one way.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. More news and updates continue right here on CNBC TV18.